Hump Day Horror, the Wednesday video where I talk about all things horror and horror related. And today I am with Karl Wolfwood, and we're gonna go over the whole entire Halloween franchise. So why don't you go ahead and tell me why this is one of your favorites, or why you wanted to do this?
Well, I'm never going to reject an opportunity to tell people my opinion, unsolicited or whatever. So I appreciate the opportunity to ramble about something I enjoy. I'm a huge fan of horror, though I have stuck into the literary shoals of like cosmic horror, H.P. Lovecraft, some of the other works of John Carpenter, and things along that nature. So slasher was a taste that I never quite picked up in my 20s, just because I too tightly associated it with like gorehound movies, which I'm not a fan of.
I'm not either.
But whenever you go back to the roots of the slasher genre, like this and Sleepaway Camp, you know, there's some actually like really good gems of cinema and filmmaking that I think is like really important to talk about, because for my own expertise, you know, why does, say, the original Halloween work? For the same reasons that, say, the first Thing works. And I don't think a lot of people are really talking about that whenever we're talking about Halloween. At least whenever you YouTube Halloween, you know, you get to get wrapped up in, you know, why the last 20 years of the franchise sucked, and and that's been done a lot. But I think we can really talk about what's good and what's fun about the franchise, and I relish the ability to do that on the platform.
So yeah, I really don't think people talk about like what Halloween and John Carpenter brought to the genre, like brought to the horror genre and the specific subgenre of slashers, which like are my favorite personally, because I grew up on like, you know, the top three: Jason, Freddy, and Michael. And people don't talk like, they talk about being scared by these, but they don't talk about the cinematography of it enough, and like, you know, just the impact that brought us secret masterpieces like Sleepaway Camp. Like, I love that movie. People don't talk about it enough. But yeah, so let's just dive right on into this. So the very first one, Halloween 1978, was directed by John Carpenter, and he had I believe $30,000 budget, and they shot it within the time span of like 2 weeks. And look what came from it. Just like, it changed everything. What did you like about it? Like, because you know, a lot of people would argue that it's kind of nostalgic, and it's kind of like a Lord of the Rings thing. Like, you got to kind of grow up watching it to like it. Like, what do you think about that?
Well, I'll say for it, the original was something that I was not exposed to like in my youth. So I don't have any like rose-colored lens to look back through on it. So I can kind of see it, at least with fairly modern sensibilities. I think the first time I watched it might have been in 2006 or 8. Yeah, so what I enjoy about it is that it feels like a very earnest project that relies entirely on the cinematography and the direction and then the editing in order to make this successful. How many horror movies exist out there that were on a shoestring budget, just fell to pieces? So that 78 is such a genre-defining event is entirely on the back of John Carpenter, in my opinion, who then goes on to make greater masterpieces. And I say that. And then number 2 is Jamie Lee Curtis, who is a fantastic last girl, and you know, as shown by her like later work in the series with H2O, and I'm not going to talk about Resurrection yet. But in Halloween H2O, like, she really she creates the character of Laurie Strode and then really hangs on to it. It's a good part of her. And so she needs to have credit, I think, secondarily for making the internal space of the movie work really well. Because you like her, and it's easy from a modern audience to just not like your protagonists in a horror movie. But you watch this, and you actually like her. Mm-hmm. I did. Anyway.
You're like rooting for her.
Yeah, the whole time. Yeah. Like I don't want Michael to kill her, and which is more than I can say for some of the other people in the movie.
Like the girl that kept saying "totally."
Totally.
Yeah. I was like, please die first.
Yeah. Just
please.
Don't break the rules. Don't break the rules of the movie. And she did, and it caught up to her.
Yeah.
It catches up to you.
Yeah. It for sure does.
But I think that's what really grabs me about 1978 is the earnestness of the project. The shot that lives with me, the two shots that live with me the most in it are first when Michael returns to kill Totally Girl, and he's dressed like a ghost.
Yeah.
Which is great. I think fairly iconic. And then after that, when Laurie goes into the house and she thinks that she's won, and no, it's not after that. It's when Michael first takes a stab at her, not behind the couch, but like she's in the upstairs area and Michael just kind of materializes from behind her.
Yeah.
Like that's fantastic.
Like that empty space, like to her right, yeah, and he just kind of fades in. I love that shot.
Yes, and so you got stuff like that really holding up this whole thing. Plus, I mean, Michael's an asthmatic in the first one, which lended itself really well to things. The kills feel very like tight, even though there's only five people died in that film. And they all feel really well done. They're not these spectacles, a la Final Destination or anything. Mm-hmm. They just feel real good and satisfying, which is kind of how I would describe the rest of the movie.
Yeah. So like going back to the whole like scenes that are iconic for you. So like mine personally were, and this scared me as a child, like to death. Like, it was whenever the little boy, Tommy Doyle, like looks out the window for the first time and all the trick-or-treaters are running around and Michael's like, you can't even really see him clearly, but he's just right across the street.
Yeah.
And that scared me so much as a child. Like growing up, when I got closer to Halloween, I wouldn't look out my window because I was afraid Michael Myers was going to be out there. And then the other scene that really just gives me goosebumps every time I watch it, like I will rewind it if I miss it, is after she tells the kids to run out of the house, and like it's a shot of her, she's just leaning against the door frame, and then Michael just sits up in the back.
Undertaker's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That part scares me to death, and still gives me chills to this day. But like it just makes me think about like, I feel like some of the writers forgot what type of killer Michael is because he gets more brutal throughout the franchise, but he kind of like plays with his victims in the first one, like with the sheet over the head and kind of like sitting up, and like he takes more of like a sneaky approach as opposed to like the Rob Zombie Halloween where he's just like, how many times can I stab one person? Let's count.
Yeah.
So
and where I really dislike Rob Zombie and his movies, set that aside. We'll get to that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think John Carpenter has a really good eye for the idea of cosmic horror, which is the horror that we get whenever we consider how inconsequential humanity is, and that there are forces larger than us that can destroy us instantly, and the universe ticks on. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I'm referencing when I talk about that. It's my favorite genre of horror because I'm an existentialist weirdo, and there are elements of that in 1978. Mm-hmm. We don't understand what Michael Myers is, and we don't have to. Because it doesn't change any of the horror that's going on screen, which is a weakness that we get from the later, like the Thorn arc and we especially it really makes the Rob Zombie movies suffer. It's like trying to understand what's happening.
Right.
We don't need understanding in horror.
Yeah.
I think that's period. I'm done with that thought.
Me, I'm like, am I done talking? Am I done thinking? I think.
Sometimes it just trails for a bit. Trails for a bit. It's fine. It's fine.
So I took some notes on the first Halloween just because there's just some fun facts that I found during my research. So I wrote down, this is a perfect example of budget doesn't matter, which we've already talked about. It was only like $30,000. And the fact that Lindsay Wallace, which was the girl that Laurie was babysitting, was watching Thing from Another World from 1951, and then Carpenter would go on to do that remake. Which was just done so well. I'll probably talk about it in another video. But and then the kill that I want to talk about, because I really like this franchise for its kills. I think they got kind of creative with them. But the first one that we all just kind of passed over, it was whenever Michael stabbed that guy against the wall. I'm like, what kind of knife is that? Like, there was still some blade showing, but
what kind of Japanese folded steel bullshit is this? Yeah.
Exactly. Like, every time I watch that, I'm like, okay.
My theory is that it's a quality that's intrinsic to Michael, so that every knife he picks up somehow becomes super sturdy and sharp enough, and also like defies physics, because you can't get the blade's like about a foot long or so.
Right.
You can't impale a person like that.
Not like that against a wall.
God knows I've tried.
But it's also like, I saw this, in my research that I did on Reddit, which, there was a whole thread talking about about the knives, and whichever knives he picks up, his we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but like how Michael is kind of immortal and has like powers because he just can't fucking die, honestly. And this whole thread was about like, maybe the knife was able to go through him because Michael wanted it to, and he controls basically the science of the knife that he's holding. And I thought that was pretty interesting. It definitely explains a lot more than I wanted, because let's just move past it, like he stabbed him against the wall. He's there, he's dead.
It's just, enjoy that art for what it is. I mean, but the fan theories will always persist. And that's fine. That's fun, I think. It contributes to some of the enjoyment of it. What's a solid example of it? Like how quickly Michael can strangle somebody to death in a car.
Yeah.
In the first one. Without getting too morbid about it, it takes quite a long time to suffocate to a point where your brain dies.
Right.
Like, the rest of you is gonna go. The thing that's fundamentally you dies fairly quickly. But still, we're talking in scales of like, you have to hold that choke for minutes.
Minutes, yeah.
And you have to do a pretty good job of like clamping all the blood out. I mean, and I'm referencing the Laurie's friend who gets strangled in the car with Annie.
Yeah.
And he comes up and just gives her the old, hand throat thing. Like,
I'm like, Michael, I don't think she died.
No, it don't work like that. But yeah, the art of strangulation goes. We got to clamp off. We have 4 large arteries going up our neck, and there's 2 of them are in the actual like neck portion, surrounded by bone and stuff.
Right.
So you can't clamp off all blood flow to the brain. Right. No matter how much the Gracie family wants to tell you can. But you can clamp off, 2 pretty well. And that can, people fall unconscious because there's a blood pressure fluctuation that makes you pass out. So when people pass out in these horror movies, it's, it would be if it was real, that blood pressure flux. And then you got to hold on to that guy until the brain starves to death. And you're talking minutes. Tens of minutes maybe before they're totally done.
Yeah.
And, I mean, so if you're going to choke somebody to death and you want to make sure they're dead, you got to go back and finish the job.
Basically.
Michael.
So some more fun facts before we move on to like the second one. I wrote that, okay, so there's a part where Laurie tells Tommy and Lindsay to go to the Mackenzie's house. And that exact family is referenced in Scream in 1996. Whenever Casey Becker dies in the beginning, and the mom and dad are like, he's like, I'm going to call the police, go down to the Mackenzie's house. And then it's also referenced in Nightmare on Elm Street whenever, I think there was a kill in the Mackenzie's house. So I just thought that was kind of cool. There's like so many different hidden like Easter eggs in the scripts in all of these movies. And then I also put here that like Jamie Lee Curtis is kind of like considered the very first final girl. And, you know, at that point in like cinema history, women were always like damsels in distress and, you know, just kind of like a weaker character. So whenever we started having final girls and Jamie Lee Curtis was like the first one kind of, and on top of that, you know, her as her own person, she played the character really well, like very strong, like not necessarily the smartest because she whimpered a lot throughout the entire thing, but she's also supposed to be 17 and scared. So I think, like, and the fact that the horror genre keeps bringing her back for things, like to host them and to go to Comic-Cons and stuff like that as the first final girl, I think that's such a dope title to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's awesome.
Yeah, she really carried the 2018 film in my mind. But I mean, 2018, you know, being its own beast, I didn't think was particularly poorly done. But yeah, JLC was really the person that I came to watch in that film, and I completely agree with you. The trend that gets bucked in later on in Halloween that I don't like is that they get away from using the final girl trope the way that they have. It like when Rob Zombie tries to use it, it feels really disingenuous, I guess. Especially by the second movie where our Laurie, Rob Zombie's Laurie, is like going through a teenage white trash rebellion.
Yeah.
I don't, and I hate to sound like a prude, but like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need Laurie doing this at all. And that it's, I mean, obviously Rob Zombie's not making movies for me, but if he would listen
to his audience,
maybe he could make a better fucking movie.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so the order that I watched these in, I switched it up a little bit because I usually watch 78 and then Halloween 2 from 81, but since Halloween 2018 is technically Halloween 2, I watched that one next. And it starts a whole brand new universe where Laurie Strode is not Michael's sister, and I think this is the only story, I think this is the only universe where she's not his sister. Is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, because everything else, the H2O branches off of Halloween 2, the Thorn goes off Halloween 2, and it's assumed in Rob Zombie. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, okay, right. So she, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. So with Halloween 2018, well, one of my favorite comedians wrote it, and it's Danny McBride.
Really?
Yeah, Danny McBride wrote Halloween 2018.
Well, hats off to that.
Yeah.
I missed that on my research.
Yeah, so. Which made me like it even more, because I was like, anything Danny McBride is in, I'm just about it. Yeah. Like, I love him. And I think it's so interesting how more and more comedians are going the horror route, like Jordan Peele. But I think Danny McBride writing this, you can just see his humor is like sprinkled out throughout everything. And I personally really liked it. I think it's interesting how they wrote Laurie's character. Like, I really thought going into this that she, if I were going to rewrite Laurie's character for a more modern time, I would make her like maybe a counselor or something. She went like the positive route, didn't become a paranoid alcoholic. But, the reality of the situation is you can either go either way with something like this. So, how did you feel about this movie in general? Like Michael's mask, the kills, all of it. Like, how did you like it?
So when I was rewatching Halloween for this project, I went through Rob Zombie movies first, and then my next one in was the 2018 Halloween.
Okay.
Because I'm a crazy person who doesn't do anything that makes sense. And so I was coming off of Halloween 2 from 2009, really hypercritical. And I was really looking for stuff to hate on in 2018. And I couldn't find a lot to really latch myself onto. So hats off to that. I will say, as I'm verbally stalling to find my notes here, that I think comedians are effective at horror because as comedians they understand the certain absurdity of life and existence and everything. Right. And that's the same observations you make that are funny can also be horrifying.
Yeah.
And so a good comedian sits on the razor's edge of being mortified by the world and then trying to alter their perception of it so that they don't go jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
So, hats off to McBride for that, because well done. Because I do like some of Jordan Peele's work. I mean, not all of it, but, another day.
Yeah. Wasn't a fan of the Twilight Zone that he did.
Yeah, I couldn't even bring myself to watch that one.
I watched one, and I was like, this was okay.
Yeah. But I liked Get Out, so...
Get Out and Us were really great, but...
What did I enjoy? I enjoyed that we tried to do some kind of new stuff in 2018 using Loomis 2.0 as an accomplice rather than as an adversary. I just, They tried it. I didn't like it though. So
I think it was just put in. I don't really know. I feel like if they were gonna do that, they should have put it in the movie earlier. I feel like it was just really randomly sprinkled in there.
Yeah, it came. His turn on the sheriff's deputy came at a point that was convenient for the plot, and it felt very nakedly so. And then Loomis 2.0 gets stomped to death. Not just
Yeah.
I didn't like that kill. That was the one kill that stuck with me for the wrong reasons. Just because, to me, Michael Myers' kills represent a certain brutality. Pinning people to the wall like a bug with a knife is one thing, but these horribly over-the-top, gratuitously violent kills belong, in my opinion, to Jason Voorhees. That's his thing. Michael goes in and he dispenses with people and then walks away from it.
Yeah.
And does not overly relish in the violence that he's caused, because he hasn't caused a lot of violence. And that one stuck out to me in part because the physics required to break someone's skull like that with 3 stops is a lot. It's a lot. I tried to do the math, but then I realized I'm bad at math, so I have no idea.
Same.
The only other thing that I'm really critical of is the sort of Home Alone feel that the final act kind of happens when they go to Laurie's house and they are combating Michael.
Yeah.
I think I understand where they were going with it. When we look at the series as a whole, we see multiple reactions to trauma, and with 1978 being our initial trauma experience. And 2018, I think, tries to right some of the wrongs of, say, depicting Laurie as an alcoholic in Halloween H2O. They try to switch it and, create a person who's not overcome their trauma, but have been shaped by it in a way that leaves them somewhat functional, but driving to rail back against the source of their trauma.
Right.
Does that make Laurie evil? I don't know. I think those are neat questions to talk about. She has the potential for it, certainly in 2018, but
well, that
where'd that
ending,
thought go? Okay, yeah, you go. All right.
that ending where it's like set booby traps, Home Alone type of thing. I thought it was cool, like the kitchen island coming out and like you can go down in it. It showed that she's not just batshit crazy. Like she's really put some thought into every scenario that Michael could throw at her if he ever came back. And there was actually an alternate ending that I watched on YouTube where they are actually physically like in the yard fighting it out, like, and they cut it from the movie because audiences didn't like it.
Yeah.
Because they're planning on making like Halloween Kills, which was supposed to come out last year. Thanks, Miss Rona. And it's coming out this year. And they're gonna make Halloween Ends, which comes out whenever. And a lot of people felt like that was too final of an ending if they're gonna continue to make 2 more movies.
Right.
So that's why they switched it to the Home Alone feel.
Yeah.
And it also, I feel like it tied in her daughter's character well too, because they had a strange relationship. They established that, saying that like Laurie was making her go outside and shoot things at a young age, like kind of just poured her paranoia on her daughter.
Right.
And at the end it paid off. Like she was able to like bait Michael to come to like at least the entrance of the basement so that she could shoot him.
Definitely.
And I thought that was a good way to tie in the daughter's character because she was kind of there.
Yeah, for the longest time. And that
Yeah.
was an interesting twist. I agree with you. Can you imagine, though, how insufferable Laurie's going to be at family gatherings after that?
Oh my God.
If I was her daughter, I'd move after
I probably
that. Yeah,
wouldn't.
Mom, you're right.
I'd be like, okay, we got it.
Oh, Michael Myers did come back to try and kill us. Thanks. Pass the dressing. Like, just... yeah, that I think is probably a stroke in the positive for 2018. In looking back after credits roll on the movie, then who's the character who's just kind of there, who maybe was intended for more? The granddaughter, I think.
Yeah.
Like that, she seems sort of a plot contrivance to make things move along.
Just to keep the whole teenage Wes Craven feel to the whole thing, yeah.
Which, I don't know. I can live with it because as I was watching the movie, moving forward, I'm thinking like, oh, that's our primary, protagonist. She's going to be our final girl, and maybe we're going to get rid of the rest of the Strode clan, which would have been a little extreme, but whatever. And she just didn't pan out that way. So there was quite a bit of subversion of expectations going on in 2018 that I can accept it for what it is. I wrote in my notes that it was a bland experience, but again, that's coming off of the Rob Zombie stuff.
Yeah.
I've changed my mind about that. Having watched the rest of Halloween, I would put like 1978 and then 2018, that continuity arc, put it at like a 9 and an 8 respectively.
Which that's fair, because there's like, there was one thing that kind of bothered me about it was, if we're continuing off of 1978, into 2018. That means that Halloween 2 in 1981 doesn't exist. So that means that Michael really only has a 5-person body count. Well, I guess technically 6 because of his older sister, Judith. They really hyped him up in 2018 like he did all the kills from the other, like, 11 movies. Like, the podcast people driving however many hours just to, like, maybe get his voice on recording with the shittiest microphone I've ever seen in my life, but whatever. And, like, I've used that microphone.
I think we watched the same video about that microphone.
Yeah. We might have, because it's like, damn. But yeah, I feel like he was just, not like he's not scary. He did kill 5 people in one night. But, like, they're acting like he has the body count of all the other Michaels.
Sure. And that did confuse me a bit with watching 2018 because of the assumption, and I don't know, it must have been out of some other continuity arc, but I had the impression for a while that 1981 was included in this continuity, and it's not. Which I agree with you, the expectation going into 2018 that he has this huge body count, and that's the Michael Myers that we're dealing with, that's a sensation that's felt in the movie. And it's not warranted, because yeah, we've got not even really a serial killer that we're dealing with. If we're just going from 1978 to 2018, we're dealing with a spree killer who's just doesn't say anything, who's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
Which in modern sensibilities, as Americans who have gone through a lot of horror in the real world, you know, 5 bodies in a night,
rookie number.
Yeah, rookie number. We need to spend some time in the Highlands and bump that up.
For real.
But yeah, I agree with you. I will take it, however, if only to get rid of the continuity arc driving from Halloween 2, where Laurie and Michael are family. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Fine with that going away.
So, like I said before we started this, you're the only one I've ever heard to say that you are happy that it went away. So why can you live without that?
What does it actually add to what we're doing here, like with the horror? To me, it's more effective because in 1978, we don't understand why Michael is so fixated on Laurie, which is built upon in 2018 because we still don't know.
Right.
Why is he doing any of this? And that question of why, and the why not being answered to any suitable fashion, is something that I look for as a hallmark of good horror. You know, who was the last remaining person in The Thing? You know, who was the first person who died to The Thing? Don't know. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, why is Freddy Krueger able to kill people in dreams? For the first couple of movies, we don't know.
Yeah.
He can just do it. And I think that is effective horror, like reaching out and grabbing people in ways that they haven't thought of to be scared. And the simple effectiveness of Halloween as being like a stranger can come into your house and kill you and your family. Like, that is a very satisfying, visceral experience. And it is really well contained in 1978 and 2018, because there's some like continuous shots in the 2018 movie that show Michael going into people's houses and killing people, and they're very effective.
Like that girl who got the knife through her.
through her neck. Yeah.
Oh my God, so cool.
One of the few times I'll accept a CGI knife plus blood, because the rest of the scene was so well done.
I even watched like an in-depth like video about how they did that one shot and why that kill would have worked better as a one shot. And even the people who did the knife are not even satisfied with it. They're like, oh, we could have made it look so much better.
Yeah.
And you're like, I also work behind the scenes, not with stuff like that, but just behind the scenes. And so just like getting to nerd out about that, and then seeing people who are amazing at what they do still not be satisfied by it. But everybody else is like, that's my favorite kill. It's like, man, I don't know. I just love that kill. I think that they should give themselves more credit for it.
Yeah. Oh, well, and if you have people who are not satisfied with the final product, I think that you're dealing with actual artists, and that's a lot better than some of the crap that the rest of this franchise puts out.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
So ultimately, like, why am I not a fan of the Strode-Meyer familial relationship? I don't feel like it adds anything.
Okay.
And I feel as the Thorn arc continues, it detracts from the story. Like,
Fair.
Did you watch Halloween 6 with like a really strong understanding of who the players are and what they're doing and why they're doing it? Like that arc wants you to understand what motivates Michael Myers, and you can't do that because everything's so convoluted with these familial relationships.
Right.
And that's why it's so lowly ranked by me.
That's fair, because a lot of people, they touch on this in Scream, which, like, I'm probably going to reference that 800 more times because it's my favorite movie, but it's like, what's the motive, and do we even care about one? Like, with me personally, like in Scream, sorry, spoiler alert, it's been out for years, you should watch it by now. At the end, whenever Billy and Stu are talking about, like, a motive, it's scarier without a motive. But then Billy says, well, your mom fucked my dad, and that's why my mom left my family. That's why I'm doing this to you. And Stu, you can see in the movie, doesn't even realize that he even had a motive. He just thought they were doing it just for fun. And so some people like the no motive thing, like, it's scarier for them. And then some people find that, with a motive, with a goal, that's scary because it's just like, let it go, or like, why are you doing this, So I agree with you. Like, I didn't even really think about it like that. Like, the whole family arc just kind of gets lost whenever they go into the Thorn cult thing, and it doesn't contribute anything. I feel like if we're going based off of Halloween 78 and Halloween 2 and 81, if those two movies just existed by themselves, I feel like the sister thing would make more sense.
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, go back and finish the job. Like, kill your little sister, whatever. Right. But yeah, I agree with you. I just feel like it does kind of get lost.
I will attach a caveat, because I thought Halloween H2O actually effectively used the familial thing. Because we see, over the course of those three movies as their own arc, we see Laurie, like, improve as a character.
Yeah.
And have a redemption and, all this other stuff that makes sense when we watch H2O. The damn shame about the H2O arc is that it then went on and made Resurrection.
Yeah, we'll get to those. Because I have a lot to say about H2O and Resurrection. But yeah, just to quickly
this is all just warm up for us to complain about Rob Zombie and Resurrection, isn't it?
Honestly, yeah. Which I'm fine with, because I've been wanting to rip that movie to shreds. Just to touch on Halloween 2 in 1981 real quick before we move on to Season of the Witch, because I gotta talk about that one.
Please do.
So
I totally dropped the ball on Season of the Witch, so.
Oh, you didn't watch it?
Didn't.
Okay, well, you're in for a fucking ride.
Okay, all
right. So Halloween 2, the notes that I took, Dr. Loomis gets like crazier in this one. Like, he just progressively gets just more batshit. And I'm like, I get it. Like, you're literally chasing around your only client you've ever had. And just because maybe he doesn't want to feel like a failure, I feel like it's a mixture of that, and he just cares that he doesn't want people to, like, get murdered and stuff. But, there's a part whenever he's just, like, yelling, he's like, people have been killed, and then the neighbor comes out here, he's like, God, you're scared, you're gonna scare people to death. And then Loomis just goes, you don't know what death is. And I just couldn't help but laugh, because I'm like, dude, this guy just woke up. Like, He has no idea what's going on. And then I also just felt like the first half of the movie and the last half of the movie were just, like, two different movies. Like, Laurie is like in a bed for the first half of the movie, and then we get this long extended final girl chase throughout the hospital. And there were some cool kills, like how he burned that girl's face in the boiler room or whatever. I thought that was dope. Like practical effects, the skin coming off of her face was awesome. And so at the end of that one, he burns and he dies, and that was supposed to be the end. And John Carpenter and Deborah Hill wanted Halloween to be like an anthology series. Right. So the third one, which is just so weird, it's Season of the Witch, has nothing to do with a witch. It's the only movie in the franchise that's not about Michael Myers. It's basically about a doctor who hears about this company called Silver Shamrock, and I'm gonna do my best to piece this together because it's a fucking shit show.
All right, good. It's completely insane. Wonderful.
Yeah, so I don't know how he comes in contact with these Silver Shamrock people, but they're basically robots, and they stole a piece of Stonehenge. I don't know how. And created these Halloween masks that children are going to put on Halloween at a specific time to watch a program by Silver Shamrock, and it's going to kill the kids wearing the mask.
So do the masks have pieces of rock in them?
It's never explained.
Okay. Right.
Like, there's literally a line in the movie where they're holding this doctor hostage, and like they're showing him, doing the evil bad guy thing, explaining what they're doing.
Yeah.
So they're like, they have him hostage. They're like walking him through the whole Silver Shamrock factory where the masks are made. And there's like this big ass piece of Stonehenge. And the leader of all the robots goes, "Yep, that's Stonehenge. It was crazy getting that over here. You wouldn't believe how it happened." And then he just fucking moves the fuck on and doesn't explain it. I'm like,
it's robot after my own heart right there.
I'm like, so what's what's going on? And
I really believed it. You wouldn't, like, you believed his statement. You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, like, you wouldn't believe it.
Better off not telling me.
Like, okay, thank you for keeping that mystery, I guess. And so John Carpenter did the music again for this movie, which is really the only thing that ties it together. Like, the soundtrack is really good, because he just kind of moves from the original Halloween theme that he took, and kind of like, it's a weird 80s metallic sound to the whole soundtrack, which I personally really liked. And he did a bunch of stuff with like a violin. I looked into the soundtrack of this a lot. So I thought that was cool. And whenever I first watched this movie, I went into it, I didn't realize it wasn't about Michael Myers. And so when I was watching it, I was like, any fucking minute now, man. Like, when's Michael coming? Yeah. And I hated it at first. It was just like a shit show, didn't make any sense. And then rewatching it, I'm like, okay, well, this is its own little weird movie. Kind of like, not nearly as good as Sleepaway Camp, but kind of like in that genre. Like, people who are just big fans of horror will really like this movie. Right. And so how they kill the kids is just, I'm not going to spend too much more time on this since you didn't watch it, but like, how they kill the kids is just, I don't mean to say this, but it's just kind of funny. Like, so they put this fucking pumpkin on the TV at like 9 p.m. on Halloween, and it plays a song, and there's a weird voice over that's saying, watch the pumpkin, watch the pumpkin. The kids put on their masks, and then their head literally just crushes inside the mask, and then they collapse to the ground, and like bugs, snakes, spiders just crawl out of the mask, and then that child's dead. So I'm like, did his head turn into insects? Where do these insects and snakes come from? It doesn't really make any sense, but it's one of the coolest kills I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. Like, the built up to it, because the whole time they're like, we're gonna kill these kids on Halloween, and you're with these masks, and you're like,
is
but
that
how?
A lot of kids?
Yeah. Okay. So they're selling these masks like nationwide.
Okay. All right. I was thinking it was like 3 masks or something, but okay.
No, it's like, one's like, and they're selling them in Halloween stores, like one is a skull, one's a pumpkin, and one's a witch. And actually in 2018 Halloween, a lot of the trick-or-treaters in that movie are wearing them. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I need to show you that kill, because it's like, it's just fucking wild. But yeah, Season of the Witch doesn't really have anything to do with Michael Myers.
Yeah, it's because I'd known of 3 as being part of a like separate universe anthology that was supposed to be part of a broader like Halloween thing.
Which I kind of wish they explored. I thought that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, like Trick or Treat was a really great movie.
That's on my watch list. I haven't watched it yet.
Really
Cool.
It is a successful Halloween anthology that has separate story arcs but are connected in the universe.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
even
really
know
well
that.
done. Really, really well done.
That's dope. So
Speaking
now
of
we're moving.
shows.
Yeah. So now moving on to Halloween 4 through 6, which to me seemed like all the same movie just 3 times. So in this universe, it's a continuation off of Halloween 2, and Laurie and her husband died in a car accident, and now their daughter Jamie, which LOL Jamie Lee Curtis, she's alive and she is in a foster family. So tell me, what did you think about all of these?
And I'll just refer to 4 through 6 as I agree with you. It feels like the same movie, except for the 6th one, because it kind of has a different like cinematic feel to it. It feels like that weird 90s thing where everything seems shinier.
Yeah.
But so Thornark as a whole commits the worst, most egregious sin that a horror movie could commit. It's boring.
Boring as hell.
In it, and then, I mean, somehow it is more boring than anything else. And also, like, Michael is transitioned into a dime store version of Jason Voorhees, which I really resent.
Yeah. You can't do my boy like that.
No. Well, like, you try to, like, I guess Michael is imbued with, like, special druid powers that around Halloween he becomes more powerful or something. He can tear people's throats out with his bare hands now, so good for him. But
yeah, grip strength.
It just, it feels soulless. Like Halloween 4. Let's see. When does the little girl kill her mom, her foster mom? That was in 5. Right?
I don't think she killed.
No.
She stabbed her.
Yes,
it was at the end of 4.
It was at the end of 4, yeah. She stabs her foster mom. And I thought that could have had some promise. The idea that something about being related to Michael Myers makes you violent. Maybe it's the blood combined, your genetics combined with exposure to the trauma. Just like everything else in the world. It's a mixture of nature and nurture. Like, that's an interesting question that they just completely shit the bed with in 5.
Yeah.
Because that's when we start introducing the whole notion of the thorn mark, and that this is somehow related to a druidic cult that finally gets explained in 6.
Which is just like, doing my research on this, 5, they started shooting 5 with only half of a script. So
it feels that way.
Yeah. And 6 had 13 rewrites during production. So, and that is not an exaggeration. Like, I did extensive research on these because I was like, what the fuck are you guys trying to do with this?
Yeah.
And, like, it definitely feels like that because, I watched 4 through 6 during quarantine last year because I was like, I'm not doing shit. I might as well just watch all the Halloween movies I haven't seen. And so at the end of 4, whenever Jamie stabbed her foster mom, I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Like, let's continue with this. And then for the fifth one to just start out with her, first of all, she lost her voice. She's not like evil anymore or whatever. It was just so misleading. And it just, I feel like we had some promise with 4 and then it just fell apart with 5. Like they just, and like I said, during my research, they didn't have a completed script. So whenever they finally landed on this Thorn cult, they had to just edit in scenes of that dude dressed in all black who just like randomly walks into scenes and shows up places. Like those were all filmed like after production because they were like, well, we need to figure out how we're gonna piece this movie together. And they were like, oh, let's do a cult. Let's just film this guy going to random places and then somehow it'll tie together in the 6th one. Yeah. And it was just such a mess. And there was a whole bunch of nobody characters and Michael kills a dog, like his second dog, I think, and that's sad. And the older sister, Rachel, the foster sister, she was a pretty strong final girl in Halloween 4. Yep. Just for her to just get killed off in 5.
She just gets waxed really fast.
And then we have to spend the rest of the movie with her bitch-ass friend who's just loud. Like...
Yeah, a good example of you can't make me care about this person movie, because that was the way the friend was. The friend is obviously not a good final girl person, and so it doesn't because they can't identify as that like trope. It makes the rest of the movie feel weird, and not to say that like things necessarily have to be formulaic, but you can't go shifting gears in a movie without clutching first a little bit. Like, come on, help me out here. Yeah. Like,
It just kind of like, did you see Cabin in the Woods? Mm-hmm. Okay, it's like the whole thing. It's very symbolic of like a horror audience. Like, we like to follow a formula of like, you know, the whore and the jock and the virgin/final girl. I don't feel like her friend fit into the final girl characteristics. She was definitely more of the whore party girl. Right. And, you know, even in the movie, she has her boyfriend dress up as Michael Myers and they pretends to kill her in front of the police. Yeah. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, let's talk about the police on Halloween 5.
Oh my God.
I don't know where that thing comes from to portray, like, 2 buddy cops as bumbling morons, like, but man, I have a career in law enforcement, and I'm usually pretty good-natured about things, but for whatever reason, Halloween 1989 really pissed me off with those 2. Like,
they put squeaking clown noises over them every time they walked into the scene.
Yeah, and, because I think the truth of the matter is, like, I have encountered people like that in the real world who are terrible cops because they don't, like, they're incapable of, like, critical thought and don't take things seriously. And those cops in that movie would have, like, when they're coming out of the party and there's the one idiot dressed like Michael Myers chasing old girl, like, they would have just shot him.
Yeah, they would have just shot him.
Yeah, so, like, I do not find your portrayal of law enforcement to be accurate or terribly clever movie.
It's just not fun. It's just not funny. Like, they tried to do like a funny thing, and it's just like, no, this is. They even say in the movie, like, yeah, we could catch them if we were good cops. Yeah. Like, why would you put that in there? Why are they even not even really with like the representation of cops, but it's just like, why are they there in the first place if you're gonna make them look stupid? Yeah. Like, what the fuck?
And then and then Michael kills him off screen anyway.
Exactly. Like, you guys just wasted my time, and you made me upset with these squeaking clown noises. Yeah. So
just a waste of emotional energy, which is kind of a good summary of the whole Thorn arc. Yeah. Waste of emotional energy. Like, I skipped. I just watched in about 10-second segments the last half hour of Halloween 6. And I don't feel bad about that.
No. I mean, I got through the first maybe 45 minutes before I was like, I can't do this. Like, I've seen it before, but like, as for rewatching it, I was like, I'm good. It's literally Halloween 4 Part 3. Like,
yeah.
but just done worse.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
you know, we did get Paul Rudd out of it, so that was his very first movie ever. So
that was his first. Okay.
Yeah. So
He,
shout out to Paul
I'm really
Rudd.
glad he got away from being like the awkward, creepy guy, because
He was so creepy in that movie. He
like,
was supposed
why
to be
would
Tommy
anybody
Doyle.
trust him?
Right.
Yeah. Like, they're like, oh yeah, just give me your baby. Why? Why, Tommy? Why would I give you the baby?
And also, when he goes to like find the baby, there's like a trail of blood still in this bus station. It's like, so how is that still there? Nobody cleaned that up. Fire your cleaning crew.
No.
And there's a live baby that nobody heard. Like, okay.
I mean, put it in Detroit and I'll believe it, but
yeah, for real.
Where are they supposed to be?
They're in Illinois.
Illinois? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, they're in Illinois. But yeah, like, that's the only thing that I like about Halloween 6 is that we got Paul Rudd. And Johnny Depp's first role was actually in Nightmare on Elm Street too. So I just was like, shout out to horror, just in general.
Right.
But, so let's move on to H2O because that's enough for, I'm just done with that. Yeah. So I have a huge problem with the title. I just read it as Halloween Water. I understand they're trying to be clever, like aged for Halloween, 20 years later. But like, it would just make, the title would make more sense if it were like near a beach or on a cruise ship or something like that. But how did you feel about this?
I agree with that assessment. For the longest time until I actually watched the movie, I thought it was on a cruise ship. So, I thought the setting really was strange about it, like in a boarding school. Was it a boarding school?
Yeah.
Somehow Lori's ascended to like headmaster or whatever of this school where her kid's at, and that whole plot setting everything up felt really
forced.
Contrived. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I didn't like it. I don't know. The angle of making Josh Hartnett.
I think it's the first one. Hartnett.
Yeah. Like putting Josh Hartnett in this weird, like, as a male final girl in this, like, that's what it felt like they were trying to do in the beginning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the movie realized that was stupid and just literally put him in a truck and like sent him down the road.
Yeah. Where we were like, oh yeah, Lori.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. The reason why people are here.
Right.
Bravo on that. And I did really like the part where Lori turns around after sending her son off, making sure they're safe, and she goes back into the school. Like that was
kind of cool. Yeah.
That had more impact than any of the Rob Zombie movies ever did.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. H2O suffers from being tepid without being boring, I think. Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't really think this was the worst one that I watched.
No, not
by far. This one, I personally like this movie better than 5 and 6, mm-hmm. just as a whole. I think the whole thing was kind of forced, where she like faked her death in a car accident, kind of like as a nod to the 4th one. Mm-hmm. But it's really hard to like fake a death like that, and change your name. But whatever. I don't know. I just thought it was, like you said, just kind of forced. But I did think this was kind of funny. So I noticed this at the beginning. Janet Leigh is in this movie. Do you know who that is?
I do not.
Okay, so
Who's Janet Leigh?
Janet Leigh is actually Jamie Lee Curtis's mom. And she played the secretary. And Janet Leigh was also the girl that got killed in the shower in Psycho.
Oh.
Yeah, and in Psycho, Norman Bates' mom is named Norma, and Janet Leigh's name as the secretary in this movie is Norma. So I just was like geeking out about that. I was like, wow, that's so cool.
And some script nerd had a heyday, making all these references.
There was even a line in the movie where she's just like, it's probably not my place to give motherly advice. And I was like, LOL, Halloween H2O, LOL.
Yeah, I caught the everyone deserves a good scare on Halloween. As a nod to the first one? Second one?
I think it's the first one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Romance angle was trash.
Oh my god.
Why they cut it in there. Who was that guy?
Are you a teacher here? Are you...
He's a counselor?
Are you a counselor?
Yeah, he's a counselor. And,
he also didn't need to die.
Right.
He could have, give Lori a fucking break, man. She finally opened up to somebody about what's happened to her, and then he gets stabbed.
Yeah.
God, that's just so wasted. Why even put him in there in the first place? It's just so...
I don't know. It felt a little, like a lot of it, forced, pandering-y. I don't understand how we're supposed to identify with the bland, boring school counselor who just kind of creepily gropes at Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah. It's not
I don't want to
chemistry.
watch this guy kiss one of my first movie crushes.
Yeah.
Knock it off. Go away.
To the point where the first time I saw him on screen, I thought he was a creepy guy.
Yeah.
I thought she was gonna slap him, but I was just like, oh, you're making out with him. Okay. Whatever, girl.
Your thing.
It's not my business.
Yep.
I thought the Michael reveal in this movie was really cool. When she saw him through the little glass window. I thought that was probably, for me, the highlight of the movie, just because them seeing each other again. Right. It has been 20 years later. Where Michael has been for 20 years, I don't fucking know. They said that he burned, because this is a continuation of the second one, I believe. And that doesn't really make any sense where he had been, but I don't know.
Yeah, there are some unanswered questions that I think ought to be answered in H2O. Where was he? And how did he survive not being burned?
Yeah, he also got his eyes shot out.
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, there were a lot of explosive things in Halloween too. Now that I think about it, because that one guy who they thought was
Ben Tramer,
friggin' Lori's date.
R.I.P.
Yeah, see you, buddy. Shouldn't have worn that mask.
For real.
That cars don't blow up like that.
Yeah, no. I'm like, okay, so just on impact,
you're
just gonna explode. Yeah. I never want to drive again. What
everything's
the fuck?
a damn Pinto these days. Yeah. I really think, aside from the forced, contrived parts, the whole teen angst angle can be shoehorned in with that. It felt real forced. We didn't need it.
No.
If they had kept this thing a fairly tight Lori's redemption arc, not dissimilar from how they ran 2018, I think H2O would have been a lot better. Because the kills felt good. While I think the one kill where he takes the gal and turns her into a covering for a lantern or for a lamp was a bit much.
Yeah.
I still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So
I still enjoyed it. Like you said, he's kind of getting a Jason Voorhees type of killer. Yeah. And I'm just like, no, Jason is his own person. Michael is his own. You're trying to do too much just because there's 13 Friday the 13th movies. So, but yeah, the ending of this one, I went into this not even seeing Resurrection. Didn't even know what happened. Had no idea.
I have the opposite problem.
Yeah. So whenever H2O ended, I was like, okay, so she killed him. How are they going to bring him back to life?
Yeah.
And so honestly, the beginning of Resurrection ruined the end of H2O for me.
Yes.
Because, why don't you take the time to explain how they brought it back?
So, the order that I watched these movies in, I watched Halloween Resurrection. It was one of my first Halloween movies, and then I went back and watched H2O because, again, I'm a crazy person full of chaos. And in Halloween Resurrection, it shows you how Michael Myers survived the end of H2O. And that was while Michael Myers was off camera at one point after being like repeatedly stabbed and pushed off the thing, whatever. He gets up, finds an EMT who's wandering around.
So fire that guy.
Yeah, heads rolled. Strangles him unconscious, takes his mask off, switches clothes. So you now have a strangled EMT who is wearing the Michael Myers mask.
With a crushed larynx, I think they said, yeah.
And that is the person that they load up in the wagon that at the end of H2O, Lori like steals a cop's gun, because that doesn't get people shot. Steals a cop's gun, hops in the wagon, and then drives off with Michael's body for a showdown in the woods, where she decapitates him at the end of H2O. Well, in Resurrection, the person who's in the back of that wagon is this EMT. So when he's like struggling to get up and doing the weird asthmatic breathing that Michael does, it's because his throat's crushed. And so Laurie's like, oh, fuck yeah, bloodlust. And like pitches this normal guy out from the front of out from inside the vehicle by like slamming into a tree. And then she gets out and she's got a fire axe, and then like Michael's like reaching out to her, like whatever, we're supposed to read it as like, oh, sister. And Laurie's like, well, nerd. And knocks his head
Get
wrecked. Off. But according to Resurrection, she decapitates an EMT.
Which is a stretch as fuck.
Massive stretch. Like, you're
gonna load this guy up in a body bag and not take his mask off?
Yeah.
Fire! You guys are all fired.
Yeah, like there's nothing about the state of being unconscious that resembles death. You know what resembles death? Dying.
Literally dying.
So like that this crew of like paramedics and then presumably like the state medical examiners, because they put him in a medical examiner truck. That's not an EMS wagon that they load him into at the end of H2O. This is like dead people go in this truck.
Yeah.
Right? That these people that work for the state collect this body and they're like, yeah, mostly dead.
Mostly dead.
Yeah, it's fine. And then cart him off when it's just a guy who's been strangled unconscious. Like,
yeah.
My abilities to suspend my disbelief was severely tested by Halloween Resurrection. And that really flavored my look back at H2O.
Right.
I wanted to be real hypercritical because I knew that someone, 4 years later is going to try to use the end of H2O, like they're going to try and talk their way out of a decapitation finish.
Yeah.
Which is tough.
Yeah.
And this is not the way to do it, Resurrection.
No, it's not.
It is way easier to just commit to the supernatural angle. Michael Myers is some sort of revenant. And
like it was right there, guys.
Yeah. We didn't have to do this.
It was right there.
Do this.
We could have just,
But here we are.
But yeah, so like, I didn't even know that, like, so she's in an insane asylum, hospital, whatever, and Michael somehow finds her.
Yeah. Using whatever pre-internet was around in H2O and Resurrection, because he finds her pretty effectively, efficiently.
Down to the room finds her, and I'm like, all right, and then kills her off. Like, Laurie Strode is dead within the first 10 minutes of this movie. And I was watching this last night, just like, what the fuck is the rest of this movie gonna be about?
Oh.
And it's literally just Tyra Banks and Busta Rhymes doing like a Big Brother type house in the Myers house and predicting the future of live streaming. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. I for that angle, like predicting the live stream thing, that, well done.
Well done.
Somebody called that trend well. But man,
The rest of it is
The rest of it is terrible. Well, because you kill Laurie and you remove a lot of people's just base desire to even see this thing.
Right.
Then you populate your film with intensely unlikable characters.
All of them sucked.
Yeah, terrible. All of them terrible. You don't even, like, you're the person carrying your most star power in 2002 was probably Tyra Banks. Mm-hmm. And they kill her off screen. I understand there's a director's cut where they show her death, but still, like, you don't think to put that into the final cut?
Yeah, that's Tyra Banks. She's like the biggest name at the time. When did this movie come out? 2002?
2002, yeah. It was either her or Busta Rhymes. Like,
should have been Busta Rhymes.
Yeah. But talk about Busta Rhymes.
Yeah.
I am glad that he had fun in that movie because it does come through in his performance that he's enjoying himself.
Right.
And I'm glad he enjoyed it because I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the movie, he kung fu's Michael Myers to death.
He literally says, "I'm gonna kung fu your ass, motherfucker."
Yeah, and then he does.
And then he does. What the fuck?
And then he knocks him into some electrical wiring, and then shocks a pool of blood underneath Michael's feet, which. Sure. Blood conducts electricity.
Sure, 100%.
Yeah, fine. You won't. This is a movie that tried to sell us that a decapitation was a mistaken identity, and you're going to want me to believe that Michael Myers just went down like that.
Yeah.
What are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Take that movie, put anybody that's not a franchise entity into it, and maybe your horror movie's passable. Maybe. It can't be worse than anything else Lionsgate's put out. But
fair.
Not that this is a Lionsgate film, but you know what I mean. But man, attaching Michael Myers to it and then having the balls on you to kill off Laurie Strode, I would expect the rest of your movie to at least be competent, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
So you get a big F. I would rather watch the Rob Zombies over Resurrection.
100%. Because Resurrection was just it's literally the Swiss cheese of the Halloween franchise. There's just so many goddamn plot holes. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, the only thing I'll give this movie is the streaming thing. I think whoever was on that wavelength of thought was doing a good job.
Yeah, predicted the damn future, that's for sure.
So, on to Rob Zombie.
Yeah, let's get this over with.
Yeah, I'll just use my boyfriend as an example. He didn't grow up watching horror movies, and I showed him Halloween 1978. He thought it was just okay. His roommate, which is also one of my friends, he was the guy in the Paranormal Activity video. Mm-hmm. He suggested that he would like Rob Zombie's version better because it's updated. And that was my face exactly. I was like, Albert, don't lie to this man.
Yeah.
Don't lie to this man.
Does he not like your boyfriend?
I guess. But we turned it off after Michael killed Danny Trejo because it was just so out of character. There's just so much wrong with the Rob Zombie Halloween movies that I wish we had longer to talk about it. So tell me how you feel.
I think first off, Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 is better than 2 by a long shot. By a long shot. Yeah. I think both movies, as you watch them, you see the cross-section. This is an existential crisis that has been distilled down into film format. Mm-hmm. Rob Zombie doesn't know who he is.
Agreed.
And it shows in this movie. In Halloween 1, he thinks that he's a horror fan. Mm-hmm. And then by 2, he has discarded that opinion of himself. Mm-hmm. And he knows why he's here. He's here to make some money.
Yep.
and that all shows. By the time Rob Zombie Halloween 2 comes around, his contempt for the medium and the audience is apparent. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to say that I resent him for that, because that's a guy who understands the market and he knows exactly what he's doing. And I appreciate the guts that it takes to say to a group of people who trusted you, go fuck yourself.
Honestly.
But I don't have to like it that's what he did. And then moreover, like, he's still surrounded by so many sycophants that think that he's some sort of genius. And
I think he's very overrated.
Oh, he absolutely
very,
is.
very, very overrated.
I liked White Zombie just fine, but it is metal for the masses. Mm-hmm. And, he turned around and, like, managed to use that to leverage this directing career. What was his experience? Nothing. He made music videos a couple of times.
Yep.
And then, just because he's a fan of horror, he thinks he can make a horror. I'm a fan of horror. I can't make fucking Halloween or a damn horror movie at all. So, like, why?
Yeah.
Why do these things exist? As a vehicle to make money.
Absolutely.
That's the answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so yeah. And my takeaway is that, like, Rob Zombie is an empty shell of a person who has just been conditioned by his industry to make money, and that's what he sees the medium as. That's what he saw the Halloween franchise as. As evidenced clearly by his transition from fan to terrible monstrosity for the genre. He talks about, before Halloween 1, Rob Zombie, he talks about not liking the remake trends.
Yeah.
And then he transitions into saying, and heavily implying, that he is doing the Halloween remake because he thinks he can improve it.
Mm-hmm. That's a bold statement, sir.
Bold statement.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah. Well, especially, like, again, slasher is not, like, my favorite genre at all. And I'm still going to rate the first Halloween as one of the best horror movies around. Mostly because it's genre defining, but whatever. But if you think you can improve on it, then let's see it. What we got with Rob Zombie Halloween 1 was not an improvement. No. I don't need to empathize with Michael Myers. I really don't want to. I don't want to understand his motivations. Don't need it. Whatever. And that's the angle that he chose to take. And then he makes it worse in Halloween 2 by trying to include this, like, weirdo, like, Jason Voorhees-esque incest angle with his mom. And the white horse, like, what does a white horse mean? Like, I wrote it out in my notes like it was this question I was going to take seriously, because I thought Rob Zombie might have taken it seriously, and he doesn't. It's like, oh, here's a fucking white horse. Get it? It's art.
That's pretty much the whole Halloween 2. Yeah. Like, it's just a glorified Rob Zombie music video, and, like, dude, we get it. Like, your wife is hot. We get it. Yeah. Like, she's in everything that you do. I'm glad you support her acting career of what she's done with you. But it's just like, dude, I just don't need to see your wife strip as, like, a montage and then cutting away to Michael Myers as a child crying on the curb. Like, I don't need that. And then how Lori's just a completely different character in these. And it's not by any fault of the actress. I think her name is Scout Thomas. She did fine with what she was given. But, what she was given just wasn't great. The only thing that I'll give these Halloween movies is the girl who plays Annie in this is actually the little girl from Halloween 4, Danielle Harris. And then her dad is Brad Dourif, who is the voice of Chucky in all the Child's Play movies. Amazing. So that's the only thing that I personally like about it, because I'm just like, oh cool, we're bringing more horror people into another movie. But overall, like you said, like, I don't need any backstory on Michael Myers, like, especially that extensive. Like, the first 25 minutes of the movie, it took us 25 minutes of Rob Zombie's Halloween to get to the opening scene of the original 1978 Halloween. And that's just like, it made the movie longer than it needed to be.
Yeah.
It just didn't, like you said, it could have just all not been there and been fine. It's just, we're just diving more and more deep into like the family aspect of it, and we just don't need to.
Yeah.
Like yeah, he killed his bully in the woods. Okay. Okay.
That's in there purely for shock.
Yeah.
I think it's also a nod to a child killer case, but which he even pulled punches on that with. The name escapes me all of a sudden, and I should have wrote it down, but I didn't. Where a kid chases his tormentor into the woods, beats him, and then does more with a stick, and I think that's what it's a nod to.
Okay,
but,
I didn't even know that.
Rob Zombie doesn't even like go into the other stuff, which for a shock jock like him, I'm surprised he didn't. You know, he goes to these lengths to try and make Michael Myers seem less supernatural, which, okay, fair. And then somehow Michael Myers turns into a literal giant.
Yeah.
Doing nothing but making like paper mache masks.
Yeah. What
sense does that make? And then like all the stuff around the masks, like we're trying to do some sort of weird poetic imagery thing, but like it reduces the specialness of the actual mask Michael Myers settles on, because it's just some other mask to cover up his face. And then we want to talk about why he wants to cover his face. We don't need to know why. Like,
I just figured he covered his face because he did when he killed his sister.
Yeah.
You know, he's just associating a mask with Halloween and killing his sister. But like, I just don't know. I just feel like Rob Zombie was really just trying way too hard.
Yes.
Way too hard. I thought it was the first one. I thought it was shot really well, like cinematically.
Yep.
It was way at that point in the Halloween franchise where you just had like that weird 90s glossy thing.
Yeah.
And then we bring in Rob Zombie, which I will commend him for. He did bring like a darker, grittier feel to the film. And some of the characters were a little bit exaggerated. Like, I don't want to see Daniel Harris say, "Oh, you want to fuck me?" whenever I saw her as a child actor. Like, I'm like, ooh, I'm uncomfortable. Like, so I just feel like a lot of it was over exaggerated, and just didn't need to be there. But overall, the second one was the worst one for me. That was just terrible.
Yeah, I found nothing redeeming.
None.
In the second. Like in the Thorn arc, Dr. Loomis deteriorates, and you can see him deteriorating. And in the Rob Zombie arc, Loomis is a
douchebag celebrity.
Yeah, like he's some jackal who's built his fame off of the Michael Myers case. And he worsens in the second movie and becomes intensely dislikable. And then in Rob Zombie Halloween 1, you think that Loomis dies because Michael gives him the old supernatural Jason head squeeze thing.
Right.
And he starts bleeding out the eyes. When you're bleeding out the eyes, you're dead.
You're dead!
And then he comes bebopping in like nothing, not even like my head hurts. In 2. And it's like, and it's obvious because when decisions like that are made, it becomes obvious that Rob Zombie was not planning on making a sequel. And so it makes the egregious nature of this cash grab just all the worse.
Yeah. Like with the research that I found, they put he wanted to do more Rob Zombie-esque things with the first one, but they were like, no, this needs to be like more close to like a true remake, just because, John Carpenter is still alive, still kicking it. But Mustafa Akkad, who's the other producer for the movies, he like just passed away in like a terrorist attack. I don't remember which one, but like him and his daughter, they died in a terrorist attack. So they were like, no, we need to make sure that this remake would be something that he would like.
Right.
So like you said, he didn't want to do a second movie, and then they convinced him to do the second movie because they told him they were going to take the reins off, which is why it's so fucking weird and just out there and just not necessary.
Yeah.
So, I mean, good try, but I didn't like it.
Yeah, I can commend the idea of like trying to make art, and if you think that you can do better, then do. Like, you have the right to make that movie. But if honestly, I wouldn't be having these issues if Rob Zombie had made his movie like A House of a Thousand Corpses, which I have way less problem with, and he had just otherwise taken all the same plot points from Halloween and just done his own thing.
Right.
And just don't even put Michael Myers and Laurie Strode in it, then this wouldn't be a conversation. I'd probably actually more enjoy that movie. But, you know,
You just had a lot to live up to, and like made a bunch of bold claims about making it better. So just, I don't know. But in conclusion, like the main question that I ask people when I interview them is like, did you find this scary? Like, what is scary to you, and would you suggest this as like a scary franchise?
Yes, as long as I can give a person, and now I can answer that in the affirmative, because I can go 1978 to 2018, and that's your arc. Pay attention to that arc. Like, don't mess with the thorn. If you like Rob Zombie, I guess check his stuff out. And if it's your kind of thing, if you're more of a gore hound, and you don't mind transparent Jason Voorhees clones, that might be worth it. And I would say probably only if you really enjoyed the 78 to 2018 arc, then go back and watch the H2O arc. But don't watch Resurrection. Yep,
just watch 78, 2018, and H2O, and you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. That's pretty much all we need.
But yeah, otherwise, I think if you're a fan of horror, Halloween is a must, at the very least 1978, so you can see the origin of slasher, and so at least you're in on the joke, because as you've pointed out, there's so much like internal reference, not only between Halloween but everything else in the genre back at it. You really need it. And it's a great introduction to John Carpenter.
Oh yeah, it was one of the very first movies to ever do that POV shot of Michael walking through the house and killing. Like, the very first one was like Black Christmas in like, I forgot what year that movie came out. It was like late 70s. 76. But yeah, like that was the first movie to do it. And then John Carpenter pulled a lot from Black Christmas to make Halloween. And so I just think overall he's just like a genius director in the way that he was able to do that successfully and not make it like a copycat thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for doing this. This is fun.
Pleasure.
Do you want to tell people where they can follow you and stuff?
Yeah, if you like weird grappling stuff and occasional content about like cosmic horror and the things that I'm doing, at Karl Wolfwood on Instagram. Facebook is the same thing, but you never can be too sure how long I'm going to keep that platform going. And otherwise, that's where I exist. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for new videos on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I'll see you next time. Bye.